Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I am 3 minutes late. I was quietly sitting in the student union over there having a sandwich. And somebody said, you know what time it is. People are inside and the demonstrators are here. Where are you? And oh dear. Anyway, it took me a while to recover from the last session. I don't know about you, but I thought it was pretty good. Anyway, Thomas, yes, and
Toni. Toni
are going to carry on with the work that they were doing yesterday, and I'll start just by saying, what do you propose to show us today, and then I'll ask you the same thing.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. So please, Thomas, tell us what you're gonna.
I make a piece like this, a double wall piece. It's thrown upside down, and I will cut it so everyone can see how it's made.
So you show us the cross section of the pieces.
Yes, I like to finish it. This one I have prepared for to coil them or to trim them.
Oh, yes, okay, for trimming. Okay, and Toni, what were you? This has made progress since.
Yes, so this is the piece I started yesterday. So I'm going to take us a little further through on the construction and try to work fairly quickly so we can get to some of the finishing as well, but we're going to see how it all times out.
Is this the same piece you were doing yesterday?
It is the same piece, but you might notice it left as a 3-legged piece and came as a 4-legged piece today. And because of how I add appendages, you start to get different shifts of weight, and sometimes you have to shift where your balance is. So I needed an additional leg just to give support as the weight was getting heavier on this side.
That's made some progress, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and would you like to start with your...
Okay.
Yeah.
Up.
And as always, we're happy to take some questions.
No, I tend to leave an open space. So a lot of the creatures that I'm looking at and the things that I'm looking at when I'm finding inspiration tend to have an underbelly and usually that more delicate area. And I find that that really helps to define the form. And when it all gets filled in, you lose some of the sense of the movement of the piece. Having it stop at a moment, I think, really helps that movement happen.
So you're introducing more variation now with the closed pieces at one part and then...
Yeah, so maybe before I get too far, I'll tell you a little bit about a couple things that I did. One, you might all notice these little supports down here around the legs. Those are not a permanent thing at all. Basically what happens, as you're putting this pressure and weight on the top, it kind of wants to do the splits. I don't want it to do the splits. So all this does is it just holds it in while I'm building it, and it just gives a little extra stability to handle that weight. And as I progress through the pieces, I've gone bigger to smaller, and now we're starting to get some openings happening. And with all of these ones, the closed forms, like what I was adding for the legs, they're hollow, so I have to cut a hole in the piece. But all the ones that have an opening, I don't actually have to worry about that, because we're hollow right through. So it's actually much quicker to assemble it at this point, because I'm not doing quite as many steps to get the pieces attached.
The wire.
Since they're not closed in, you don't have to make the holes into the bodywork to make sure they connect.
Yes, exactly. That's right. I suppose not everyone was here yesterday.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yes, please. Did I get out of the way? Yes, okay. The familiar cry.
Perfect. Thank you.
So some of the pieces, as I attach them, I just need to add a soft little coil, just if there's not quite enough clay material at the bottom, just to fill in those joins. And I do like the clay quite soft for this part, so it just can kind of smear into the body of the work. If I'm using too dry of a clay, you get that hard ridge and it's really hard to move it. Yeah, I find I have to also stop and look a lot at what I'm doing at this stage to try to figure out how this progression is going to work through the piece. The clay is still fairly soft right now, so it's pretty easy for me to create little bends within it to work within that motion that I'm trying to capture in the piece. If the bend isn't enough by itself,
Okay.
I just slice off some of the attachment or the bottom of it.
Can I ask how many of you were here yesterday for Thomas's demonstration? Gosh, that's a good number. Okay. And how many weren't? Okay. Thomas, would you just explain your approach to throwing the double-walled vessel?
What do I say? Oh, now it's a hole to the bottom. Every piece is thrown upside down. So it's like this. I throw them up, close them, and the other one is thrown up and go like this. And when it's leather hard, I prepare it because I can trim it then. You can turn it. I do it like this.
And you're working really sort of upside down often, aren't you?
I see everything upside down. I see you upside down. Everyone is.
Absolutely. It's so much of my work is building the building blocks for what I need to make. And it's quite interesting. You guys kind of saw the part that takes the most time. So getting that body, getting the legs on it, getting that stability, and throwing all of these pieces, that takes the time. But then when it's actually time for construction, it just kind of all comes together. It's my favorite part where the magic happens. It's really, it's the fun part, yeah. Oh, quite a few. Okay. So yesterday we constructed the main body and put the 3 legs on and showed how those individual. The extremities.
And how long did you spend working on this yesterday, would you say?
I did it this morning, actually. I gave myself a little break last night. And yeah, it was probably, to get to this stage, I'd say about 3 hours. Yeah. So it really does get moving along. I kind of use the body of the piece to figure out how I want it placed. So I actually the body's quite hard right now, probably a little harder than I'd normally work on it, but I just push into the location that I think it should go, and then I just use where those marks are happening on the extremity I'm about to add to decide where to cut it off. The truth is it's pretty flexible because I'm going to fill anything with a coil that doesn't fill, but I'm just trying to get into those little spots. And then once I find my spot, I just trace an outline so that I can find the spot again. And often I give myself a little guideline, so I have the same orientation when I put it back. So I draw a line on the extremity as well as on the piece, and then I know where I need to fit into.
Do we have any questions? Oh, yep, over there. What weight? Thomas, what is the weight of the clay that you're working with? The weight?
What clay?
The weight of it?
It's 5 kilos, about.
I think it must always depend on the size of the piece you want to make, doesn't it? And Thomas's pieces vary a lot in size. He threw us a small one and a large one yesterday. But the clay body you're using is the one.
Normally, I use a German clay. It's VM. It's Sibelco is the company.
Okay.
With grog, 40% grog.
40% grog is a lot of.
And fine grog.
Okay.
0.2, like a sand.
To dust.
Yes. So it gives a good structure.
Oh my goodness, that's very fine.
Yes, it's
So do you find you do not get very much shrinkage then as a result of that?
no, not so much shrinking, and it's also good for my copper red.
Right.
Because before I had often the problem, 2 days later, the whole piece cracked because it was so strong. The glaze is so strong. I have to make it a little bit similar. So that's why I came to this.
This body you formulated
body,
yourself. Okay. And here it's amazing, but potters get very fixed in what they like to work with, and then you travel across the world, and you land in somebody else's patch, and you throw what they throw at you, and they do amazingly well with it. Is the piece that you're making now basically going to repeat this?
Yes,
here?
it's the same piece.
Right. And is this the bottom I'm looking at?
This is?
Is this the base I'm looking at?
This is the base. So you turn them.
Okay. Okay.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about what inspires the forms, and then in case people weren't at your talk?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time in nature looking at lichen and slime molds and moss, doing a lot of close-up detail photography. And I look at how things grow and the patterns that they grow in, and I try to reinterpret that in my own work. So it's kind of loose what I'm doing, but if you look at lichen, it has those little flowers, or moss has those little flowers popping out of it sometimes, and so I think of these little cups being reminiscent of that. I know there's quite a few things in nature that grow this way. It can just straight up be a flower, truly. I'm not too worried about that. It's really more just being interested in how nature works and trying to find a way to show that in the work. As I'm going, you probably can see that I'm starting to try to progress up into more open forms. I'm not going to fill in. Normally, I'd fill in quite a bit more all the way up through here. We'll have a little bit more of a blank area than I normally would, but I don't want to spend all my time just doing construction for you guys. So I'm going to try to get to just a couple of the larger openings and then move on to decoration.
Oh, yes. People are keen to see some decorating
Yes.
today. What are these?
Oh, those are part of the decoration.
Okay, I'll wait.
You're jumping ahead.
Go back.
Now close them. I close them, and then you have air inside. It's like a balloon. It holds better than. Can't collapse anymore then.
The air continues to support it now, doesn't it? I
Yes.
find that too, yeah.
Yeah.
We have two balloon makers here.
I have a balloon.
There is nothing quite like a clay balloon, I have to say. I just like the completely different results of our clay balloons.
Do you have a favorite part of the process?
It's quite a range. I definitely enjoy when I get into this part where it just starts to grow and develop, and I get to be really responsive to what the form is telling me to do. I was explaining to a few people that were coming around to my booth today. They wanted to know, oh, do you have a drawing ahead? Do you have a plan in mind? I have a plan to a point. Really, I work towards an idea or a feeling. I'm interested in, is it going to be kind of a closed off form, or is it going to be more open? Some of those types of things I'm thinking about before I start. So there will be some decisions that I make that way early on. But really, once it's on its little tripod base, I take some time and I look at the form and I see how it's moving, and then I start working to that movement. And I think you can really see like that twist is happening with all of the extremities right alongside the piece. But I kind of want the piece to inform my decisions.
This piece gives me a real sense of architectural form as a great contrast to an organic form, one that's sort of machine sharp and one that's growing. It's a nice contrast to see the two working on stage.
You'll probably notice I'm leaving a lot of finger marks and mess as I go. I actually usually do that when I'm working, as long as I don't leave it too crazy, but I like to do the cleanup afterwards, because if I spend too much time worried about how perfect it is while I'm building it, I kind of lose the flow of the making. So it's a step that I come back to. Sometimes I regret it because, as you can see, it's really tight in these areas, so getting into some of those to clean afterwards, not so great. But I've definitely learned that it's still, as the overall piece, it comes out much better if I'm not too worried about that part while I'm making.
Thomas, for those that weren't here, the question was, sorry, I've disturbed you. It's my fault. Ruined the demonstration. I was asked what led you to start making things upside down.
Why?
Yeah, why? What's wrong with right way up?
That was the idea. In the beginning, I really loved to do cake forms. And now maybe you have a little bit of fantasy. It's like a cake form.
So it's like a cake dish.
It's a cake dish,
Okay,
it's
a plate.
an open cake dish.
Okay.
And then it was in the beginning, my son said, come and drink a coffee with us. And then I go and drink a coffee. And it goes longer. I just made a cake form. And then I come back to in the studio. And then, it's too dry, I take it and put it, and I say, oh, it's a nice form, So that's why I start double wall pieces.
You mean you threw it right way up to start with and found it was...
Yes, it was, so, and then I start to make it over it, or I close it. That was the beginning.
Okay. Accidents happen for a reason.
All right, we're getting close to next steps.
What's the largest scale you've worked on?
About 4 feet. Oh, I guess I always do this here. And does everyone know 4 feet?
Feet's good.
Feet's good. We can do
Feet's still
feet.
good,
Okay,
yeah.
good. 4 feet.
We're ambidextrous. We can do it in centimeters.
Good, good. Yeah, Canada does both as well, but when you're all the work in the States, they want it in feet and inches, so
Yeah.
get used to that. Right. So some of you saw me yesterday throwing these ones where I let little rips and things happen. Those I very rarely, like this guy's pretty much standing straight up, but because this sort of makes me think of wilting or something kind of coming to that end, I would never put it like that because now it feels confusing. It doesn't make sense. It's not doing what it should. So often those parts, and they're a little drier than normally, they'd be pretty flexible right now, but those parts I'll tend to kind of hang down or allow to be in that place where that kind of action could happen to the piece. Yeah. So I'm just going to throw a couple more on here. Actually, do we have a time on?
25 minutes in.
Lovely. Okay.
Can I ask both of you how you deal with drying and firing? Because all these enclosed forms look like they would dry at different rates, and don't you get problems with cracking? Do you not, Thomas? Do you get problems with the cracking when the clay is formed, closed forms?
Was? Beim Brennen?
Is it just a secret of
I have,
drying it slowly?
you have to dry it slowly.
Oh, okay.
The drying process is really important.
So don't be in a hurry. Don't rush.
Yes, don't rush. It's not like here I have to rush a little bit, but it's normally you wait one day and put it in, put it out in the plastic, so it can be dry really slowly. Okay. I think it's important. The drying process is really important.
Do you have any problems drying? Any issues with a lot of enclosed air?
No, actually, it's usually pretty good. I just have to remember that when it starts to get to the whole body of it, a little bit more that stiffer leather hard, because it is an enclosed form, I need to give some air escape, or else the air becomes too big for the interior of the piece, and I get cracks. So I'm going to skip over what my brain is telling me, because it hurts me that I know I'm not where I want to be on finishing, but I want to give you more steps, so it doesn't matter. We're just going to know that in a perfect world, we would land somewhere much more beautiful at this point, but I want to just keep us going along a little bit.
You want to just describe what you would do if you had all the time in the world and you weren't?
Absolutely. So I think it's starting to actually happen here. So we're starting to get this nice growth and movement that's happening. I would put, well, the back would get all filled up probably fairly similarly to what you see on the side. And then we'd have quite a few more blooms. I always make up what I call them. It changes almost every time. That would be happening up here, and we'd start to really get some drooping ones happening down the side. So you get this real progression that's happening through that speaks of movement and of life cycle.
I think Thomas is about to do something dramatic here.
Okay, we'll get the camera on Thomas if we can. There we go.
Are you going to? Yeah, go on.
I cut them so everyone can see how it is, and then I take this one to trim it so everyone can see how it's made. So to look like this.
Oh, that's beautifully uniform. Beautifully uniform.
Lovely.
We won't ask you to.
I was like, I think I should do that next.
We're all just wearing
You got
everything
yours.
up today.
Yours is next.
Habe ich zu viel gemacht oder wie?
Just a few ways to clean up the form. I really like the front of it to be quite smooth. So often what I'll do is I'll just take a serrated rib and build in some texture and kind of work through any marks or fingerprints that I've left behind. I do sound like a tool fiend because I did this yesterday too, but I'm really not. I just have 3 or 4 tools that are my favorite. The red mud tool rib is one of them. I come back and I start smoothing that out. And what this does is it takes out the texture as well as any little lumps and bumps, but I find that it's a really nice way to start getting a nice smooth surface on there in a fairly quick way. So I would spend some time, any large surface that I can access this way, I would spend some time smoothing it out like that. To those of you who know my work, quite honestly, it doesn't have to be fully perfect. These little lines I've left behind would be terrible. Those would show once I start adding the textural surface that I do. So once all of this was done, then I come in with sponges and spend a whole lot of time coming in and smoothing it. Now I'm doing obviously the easy part right now. You all saw me yesterday kind of throwing them around. The truth is at this stage, there's a little more of that would have to happen. I'd need this to be more set up to do it. But I don't want to just smooth all my top surfaces and what you can see. I want to get underneath. I want it to be fully finished. So at that point though, often I'll use a fairly thick piece of foam and try to find a place that it's safe to kind of set it on, which would be the underbelly. And then I can kind of come in underneath and really get all that smoothing done.
I have got to tell you, Toni, the movement that I can see from this side, and I don't know if it's been caught up on the camera.
This way?
Yeah, but just when it's that wet clay and it really looks like moving. When you're washing it there, it looks like as soon as you're going to get rid of it, it looks like you're washing a dog or something. It's going to run over there. Yeah, it's got such life in it that I can see.
I love that. People always talk about when they're in their homes, they're worried they're going to get up at night and walk away. Or
Yeah.
Thomas, would you, whoops, every time I do that, would you describe your tools you're using to do your trimming? The tools that you're using.
The tools?
For trimming, yeah.
This is a fantastic tool.
Oh, right. Okay. A surform blade? Okay.
Yes, I use them really often.
So you go through them regularly? One a week? Okay.
Ich verwende viele, many, I take many.
Okay.
I always buy a really
Okay.
box.
Okay. But
It's only to give them a little bit of curve.
okay.
So just am I interrupting? No, okay. So just a couple other things. When I am getting into these little nooks and crannies, I just try to find the cheapest, worst brushes I can find. I want them kind of stiff and, oh, sorry about the dust, stiff and scrubby. And I just get them a little bit wet and I go in this way just to smooth in some of those areas that I can't reach into very well. Do any of you, I didn't grab one for this demonstration, but do any of you know those little black sponge brushes, like it's a little black? That is also one of my favorite tools, and sometimes I'll just cut them a little narrower at the top, and that's a nice way to get in between and do all of this. Again, I'm stopping short on all the finishing steps just so I can show you a little further along.
Can we have a close-up on Thomas, just on his top of his pot, if possible, while Toni's rearranging?
Thank you.
There's a mystery person you can't see. I can't see. He lives somewhere in the far beyond, and he controls what goes on in here with the screens. So it takes a little while to relay the information, and you have to get down on one knee.
I think one of the complexities is naturally a cameraman will always follow sound, and when people are actually doing something intricate, they go quiet. So the natural instinct frequently is to put the camera to where the noise is rather than where the silence is. So we have to have a little patience sometimes to get in the right place.
So this is just the edge of a sharp metal kidney, just gently removing it. A bit like Halima Cassell, isn't it? Are you just removing material, or are you forming it as well?
No, I don't forming. I put it away. When I throw them, the bottom is, this part is a little bit thicker. I have in mind when I throw them to make it a little bit thicker.
That's a good question, because it is obviously not a cake stand now. It's no longer a cake stand, it's becoming a sculpture, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. No, it is kein Kuchenteller mehr. I often think about houses, you know. It's like for me it's a house. Wasserturm, ja, zum Beispiel.
Oh, a water tower.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Whatever.
So it's more like architecture. Yes, it's very much a building, a building process. And what about your glazing and color processes on this?
Color process.
Your glazing and firing. Would you tell us a bit about to finish?
Firing, I fire with a gas kiln. 1280, it's a strong stoneware with a strong reduction. And I spray the glazes.
Do you biscuit fire?
Bisque fire, yes, 950. And the reduction, I start also 950 to the end of the, and then I stop the firing and cool down. It takes about 3 days.
1250?
1280,
1280.
1300.
Okay. And are your glazes
made by myself?
Okay.
And I look often in glaze books and try, then I changed it a little bit and things like this. And if you have a recipe, you don't follow them, you know.
Did you hear that?
It's a lot of work.
He's not giving his recipes away.
Oh.
Unless you come and talk nicely, I'm sure.
Just under 10 minutes left.
What are your favorite color schemes then? What do you?
It's changed. In the beginning, I loved to make a really nice copper red. It takes me about 5 years to find the right one. But now I like matte glazes. It's always changed a little bit. Ash glazes I really like.
I think we always think the grass is greener on the other side, don't you? You see somebody else's copper red, and that's what you want for a while. And then, as you say, you move to maybe more natural materials. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, so, sorry, go ahead. So I started to, who's going? I think I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
No. Huh?
Okay, I started adding color to the piece, and I'm doing it, like the clay is much wetter than when I would normally do it. It would be quite a hard leather hard when I'm typically adding color. And normally I don't add this bright of a color, sometimes I do, but normally it would be black, but because we don't get the benefit of seeing me add the real color to the pieces that I normally do, I thought I'd give us something bright for right now. I started adding the color at this point so that I could bring in
Yeah.
these little pieces that I make. So some people say they look like Q-tips. Not all of them are this shape. But what this is it's a little porcelain piece that I have pre-fired, pre-glazed on nichrome wire. And they're all different sizes, all different,
Do a piece.
I use some different thicknesses of wire as well, different gauge. And the reason that I put the color in first, this is about the only part of color that I typically do pre-bisque, is because I need the pieces to go in and already have a base color there, because if I put the piece in and then try to spray into that, I'm going to cover it entirely. I can't access it the way I need to, so I need to get that base color in there now.
And do you put, that's a velvet underglaze or just?
Yes, well, and it's not always. I do use velvet underglaze. I have some of my own underglazes that I make. I use quite a variety. It's really based more on the color that I'm looking for more than the material. And again, the velvet's nice because it does have that nice texture, so it really accepts that textured surface that I'm going to be adding later as well. So it's one I do like to work with. So I just go through and try to pick, you know, the right length of piece. And it's really quite simple. I mean, I'm just going in, and again, I would probably wait till the underglaze was dry, but not today. No. And I'm just gonna go in somewhere near the center if I can. Give it a little push into the piece. And it starts to, I like this stage because it's like the littlest thing, but it starts to give me a better sense of completion and finish, and it just kind of moves it along. So sometimes I'll put multiples in there. Typically, I like the simple better, so I do end up more often than not just with, sometimes we get the conjoined twins. That happens too. We'll just put that one in, it's fine. Ooh, every so often I do this to myself. It's quite a deep hole, so then I have to find a longer stem. So we'll just pop it in a different spot here.
I think we're waiting over here for, Jim, are we waiting for a cut or?
You have about 5 minutes if you want to talk about
4 minutes.
Yes, we can talk, or I can cut it again.
No, do you want to see another thing cut? No, you don't want to see. They've had enough cutting for today. Every time a pot is cut, I can fear some people dying inside, you know.
Do you ever use slips on these at this stage?
Slips? No.
What do you do in your spare time? As we seem to have some.
I understand.
We've time for a question or two from the audience? Have we got a question over here, sorry.
Ich genieße die Atmosphäre.
Yeah.
I enjoy the atmosphere.
So, Tony, a question about your little bits that you're inserting.
Yeah.
They're porcelain?
Yes.
And are they fired to bisque first?
They're fired to bisque, then to glaze, and then I put them into the earthenware and downfire them in the firings that happen within the piece. Yeah.
And when they're glazed, are they glazed in entirety and you stand them upright in the
Yeah, I just take a coil of clay. It looks very much like this, and you'll just see row upon row of all these little guys poking out like this.
And that's nichrome wire, yeah?
Nichrome wire. And then I just have to snip them off again. And then I have all these little containers, all different colors, all different sizes, a little bit everywhere.
Thank you. A question up the back? Did you say you normally paint it all black before going to color?
Oh, good question. So I do a few different things. Usually I do the interior of this cup black because I kind of like how the little porcelain bit floats within the black. But I do other colors as well. Sometimes I'll paint the entire piece a black base. It really depends on the coloration I want overall. It's so many underneath areas to get to. I can't cover it all with the sprayed surface that I put. So I do like to have some sort of colored base, or sometimes just actually the red earthenware clay is perfect. So it really just depends on what my end color is. Many, many, many coats, yes. So it's a combination
sprayed.
of, yeah, sprayed, slips, glazes, underglazes, a bit of everything.
And we had another question over here. Yep.
The green glaze.
In the exhibition,
Yes.
would you describe
It is a
glazes
copper
you've got?
green. It's a cobalt green.
Oh, there's a
It's
cobalt and a
especially
copper.
green.
Okay.
I spray them, yes. I spray them in 2 layers. And nice about this glaze is when in parts you have a little bit more temperature, they change into a blue. Sometimes you have a blue and a green. This is fantastic.
What, do you know what the material is that's the variable in there?
It's a copper, not a copper, cobalt.
Right.
It's cobalt inside. It makes this green, this fantastic green.
Is this a carbonate or oxide?
It's
or
a carbonate.
carbonate. Okay. The
You
oxide.
can also use the oxide. It's
The oxide is
same.
much stronger, isn't it?
Yes. It's a little bit a different weight or so, but
Okay.
you can also use an oxide.
Okay. So you spray in thin layers to build up.
Spray them, yes.
Different glazes, so you.
Often I do different, but not this green one.
No.
Often I do a Temuku glaze, and over the Temuku I do a copper red.
Right.
Or sometimes I do a black glaze, and over it a white one, and then it makes bubbles, the black one.
Is
Then
is
they
that
melt,
from
and they make a
blistering?
lot of points then. It's
Right.
really nice also.
Okay. The thickness of the glaze makes a huge difference in the color itself. Yes, a question.
In some of Constant's pots, the glaze runs off the edge. I just wondered, is that by design or by accident?
When the glaze runs off the edge, is that intentional?
Yeah, in the beginning it was a accident, and now I use it as a special thing.
Somebody told
That
me.
was an accident.
So somebody told me that when you're learning, all your learning, your real progress comes through accidents, and then if you can repeat the accident, it's a technique.
Nice.
Was für den einen ein Fick, das ist für den anderen was für einen. Sometimes for someone is a Fehler, an accident.
Yes, sometimes it will look like a mistake, but for other people, they recognize the quality. Yeah. Are we at time?
Yep, we're just out of time. So thank you very much, Tony. Thank you,
Thank
Thomas.
you.
Thank you.
Again, wonderful knowledge shared. And next up in here, we will have Sharon Griffin and Theodora Horafas. And bear in mind that at 2:30, Keith will be signing his book as well. Thank you.